Hey guys, so 2.1 is coming, and with it comes the anniversary, and this is probably the best time to join the game or rejoin the game depending on how you play, because there's 4 really good 5 stars for 2.1, and there's also a lot of events that will help you raise your account very fast. So I figured this is a pretty good time to drop a newbie / reroll guide specifically for 2.1, and it might be applicable later or it might get outdated, but I'm trying to make sure that this will be future proof. Okay, so in this video I will be discussing all the tips, tricks, flips, whatever you want to call it, to make sure that your free-to-play account can handle endgame as fast and as efficient as possible. Do note that an entire guide for the gameplay of Starrail itself will need a separate video because it is pretty deep. It's a pretty deep battle system, I guess. For now, I will only be discussing things in a resource management perspective by equilibrium level. So we're here first at Equilibrium 0, everybody goes here, and in Equilibrium 0 you meet your first trap. It's the wishing system, more specifically standard pull. Anybody that's played Genshin or any Honkai game will tell you that please don't spend your jades on standard pulls. There's so many sources of standard pulls, it really isn't just worth using jades on it. At Equilibrium 0, after you finish the Herta Space Station storyline, you go to Reroll 6 and then you unlock your first Calyx, which is an XP Calyx, and you unlock stamina. Obviously don't use fuel yet at this point. The rewards you get from XP Calyxes at this point is just so low. And your major goal, once you unlock stamina, is to raise your trailblaze level as fast as possible. Because when you raise your trailblazer level, you just get more rewards from Calyxes, and you also unlock a lot more features when you raise your trailblaze level. To raise your trail level as fast as possible, you have to focus on trailblaze missions, which gave the most trailblazer XP. And if you complete these trailblaze missions, sometimes they unlock Echo of War, which is time-gated weekly content, the weekly boss for you Genshin players that are listening to this. And you also unlock more events, time-limited events as well, if you complete your trailblaze missions fast enough. I'm going to be adding the stamina priority here, and unfortunately it's kind of a joke because the only thing you could farm in stamina for right now is EXP and credit, so I guess you just use your stamina there because you can't really use it anywhere else. After that, you get to Equilibrium level 1, and you get introduced to the trace material system. This is used to level your light cones and level your character's talent level. At this point, it's better to farm trace materials than EXP because EXP just has a natural gain through missions and quests, whereas trace materials don't really have that. At Equilibrium level 1, you're also introduced to Simulated Universe, and you're also introduced to Herta Bond. I've been a victim to this, and I will have to tell you right now, please do not use your bonds on standard pulls. It's not worth it. These Aussies are really good, so please just don't use it on standard pulls. Get a light cone of your choice of any DPS that you actually want to main. Like if, for example, you have Clara, you get the full of an Aeon. If you want to main Dr. Ratio, you get the Stellar Cruise. You know, just don't use it on standard pulls, please. As for Simulated Universe, actually clearing it, you're not really pressured to clear it on release because again, it's permanent. And with the way Simulated Universe works, you kind of need to finesse it if you want to clear it at low level, because the enemies are generally higher level than you unless you've reached Equilibrium level 5, I think. There you can actually compete with levels on the characters. So just don't feel pressured to build any characters just because you can't clear Simulated Universe, because it is permanent. You're not gonna miss out on it. With Equilibrium 1, you're also introduced to Relic. Oh boy, this is a headache to discuss, but as for now, don't farm relics because it really isn't that much of a good reward. And relics at this point of the game, you don't really need to have to clear. So yeah, at this point, just use blue or purple relics that you get from chests. So for now, stamina priority is Traces and then EXP at credit. And Equilibrium 2, you are introduced to Forgotten Hall, which is the precursor to the endgame Memories of Chaos. Don't feel pressured to clear Forgotten Hall at Equilibrium level 2. It's not going anywhere, it's permanent, and you are unlikely to actually reach Memories of Chaos, which is the actual thing that matters, the time gated. So it really doesn't matter to care much about MOC at Equilibrium 2. You're also introduced to Echo of War, which is the weekly boss, like I said again, and please unlock all of this as soon as possible using the trailblaze missions because it is weekly time gated, and you will know that it takes a pretty long time to actually raise your characters, and you're time gated by Echo of War to upgrade their trace material. So yeah, you're also introduced to Stagnant Shadow, which is just normal bosses that drop resources for you to level your characters. This is kind of equal priority to trace materials. Levels generally are more value than trace materials for talents. So for our stamina priority, Echo of War comes first. It is time gated after all. So followed by Stagnant Shadow, which is equal to traces in value, followed by EXP and credits, again because EXP and credits is so abundant thanks to passive gains from mission. And relics is in the far bottom. Just don't farm relics still. skill at this point. At Equilibrium 3, you're introduced to 5-star relic farming. Oh boy, here we go. My personal opinion is to not farm relics yet for Equilibrium 3, but some secondary opinions do say that you're okay to farm relics, but only for main stats. I personally don't agree with that, but it is viable, I guess. I think that generally people still agree though that you don't use fuel at this level. Because at this point you don't need 5-star relics, and I think you can reach Memories of Chaos at this point, but probably not Clear 1. I'm not actually sure because in my personal experience I've only reached MOZ 0. I couldn't beat MOZ 1 at this Equilibrium level. Now you also get introduced to 5-star relic crafting, and this is actually more impactful. You probably get the materials to synthesize relic through the quests and missions, and here's what you do with them. You synthesize relics with a very flexible bonus, for example Hackerspace. If their bonuses are good enough, then you should try and synthesize products. You ignore the substat strength and focus on main stats. I generally recommend supports first because supports don't care about substats, they don't care about main stats. Hunt for your supports first because your damage dealers later on will have to eat fuel anyway for their own relic. Of course, we have to talk about self-modeling resin because it's just such a good tool for this. At Equilibrium 3, self-modeling resin, you definitely use it for support speed. You don't even care for double crit speed boots, just speed boots on your support because that is very impactful. Also ERR ropes, just so you could get your burst rotations up. Speed boots and ERR ropes are generally the hardest ones to hunt, so this is also a general advice for future Equilibrium levels. So for stamina priority, it doesn't really change that much. Echo of War comes first because likely still you're kind of scraping for Echo of War at this point. Stagnant Shadow is equal value to traces, EXP and credits, and relics are a lot less shit now. It's more viable, but I still wouldn't recommend it. Just as a side note, at Equilibrium 3 I did manage to reach MOZ 0 and clear Pure Fiction 2. So if you're a better player than I am and if you had a better roster, which included Japard by the way, so if you have a better roster and you play better than me, you could probably reach MOC if you really try. Equilibrium 4, I hate this because this is the part where it gets really expensive. The game plan here is to select 8 to 10 of your best characters that can make up a good team with good enough elemental coverage among each other. So for example, you have to build a couple of damage dealers just to cover elemental weaknesses. You build these 8 to 10 characters for endgame up to level 70 with traces, then light cone, then relic. Leveling traces first is more efficient because it's just less RNG, but if you're done with basically everything, then you can start going for relic. Now let's go to 5-star relic farming. How do we do that? You can use your fuel now at this Equilibrium level, by the way, so go nuts. You hunt for your main stats first and then you level those, and once you get better substats with the same main stat, then you just replace it. You should also prioritize flexible caverns, for example the Pioneer Domain Cavern, the Longevinous Cavern, Prisoner Cavern. A pure DPS cavern like Prisoner Domain can use all your dead prisoner sets, so you can synthesize it for support sets like Hackerspace. At this Equilibrium level, you could probably reach for MOC 3 or 10 depending on how good your relics are. So for stamina priority, it changes quite drastically. Echo of War still likely very scarce for you, and everything else is basically in equal value. Now why is EXP and credits equal value now? Well, the fact of the matter is stuff just gets super expensive that you might actually just run out of EXP and credits trying to level everybody. I've experienced that before, so just look out for your EXP and credits and see if you're actually struggling for them. You might get blindsided by it. Next is second to the last, Equilibrium 5. If you've done everything right, then you can reach MOC 12 and full star Pure Fiction with this Trailblaze level. I've done that before on my Asia account. At Equilibrium 5, everything is just as expensive as Equilibrium 4. The general tip that I feel like a lot of people are falling into is that Equilibrium 5, you kind of have to budget. For traces, you can leave them at 8 for most characters. Obviously, this depends because Qingque doesn't really need a maxed ult talent. You can probably leave her ult at like 1 or something and probably still do a lot of damage. And most DPS characters don't need to max their basic because they never use it. And healers can generally chill at level 6 if their healing is strong enough. I want you to consult guides on this because it really does vary through every character and I can't cover all of them. To budget light cones, some can stay at level 60 or 70, generally the support one. Support light cones are there for the passive, so increasing their level for base stats doesn't really matter. The biggest examples of this are multiplication and cogs. Let's talk about levels now. Leveling your characters to 80 should be your #1 priority. Why is this? Because enemy defense scales off level, so you do less damage with less level. And the same goes for you. If you have less levels, the enemy will hit you harder and you might die very easily to them. You also need levels to unlock strong ascension traces. So example, Ruan Mei's Ascension passive 6 gives 36% damage percent. So you definitely want to level Ruan Mei just to get that at the very least. As for your stamina priority, at some point you do ascend all your characters so Stagnant Shadow starts to lose value once you've done everything, but it's basically the same as Equilibrium 4. Now Equilibrium 6, this is the end. How you use your stamina is up to you at this point. You clearly don't need my help if you cleared MC 12, so really just do everything, build anything you want, spend it on anything you want. So yeah, hope you guys like that reroll guide, newbie guide, etc. I will be summarizing all the stamina priorities that I laid out here. Some for more, do the algorithm stuff. See ya.
Muge, 進みましょう。